Jeff Raybould, how are you?
I'm doing good today.
You are the chairman of the Water Board for Idaho, and the Water Board is made up of 8 members that are directly appointed from the governor. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then you give direction to the Department of Water Resource that is supposed to execute on your broader plan. Like, okay, you guys need to work more on recharge. You need to work on production, things of that nature.
That's not entirely accurate.
Okay, help me understand.
The Water Board is charged by an amendment that was made to the Constitution in the 1960s to take care of the water resources of the state. We're in charge of planning. We're in charge of developing projects. It's our responsibility to make sure that there's a sustainable water supply for the state. The Department of Water Resources works more in the area of administration, enforcement of water rights, issuing water rights, and making sure that the water is appropriately delivered to those who have the water rights to have that. And our job is more of primarily a planning effort to make sure that things are in order to see that the water resources of the state are protected and utilized in a fashion that benefits the residents of the state of Idaho.
Now, one thing that we were actually talking just before we turned on the cameras, one thing that again, I have very limited knowledge of water, which is why I've so enjoyed talking to, Brian Olmstead and other water board members. But the one thing that I've been thinking about is, okay, agricultural, that's the big issue because we have a real, agricultural economy. And if water dries up or if water's mismanaged, that's going to be really bad for, people in agriculture. And you pointed out really quick, you're like, no. It's bad for everyone if the water goes. Help me understand this again. Because I kind of cut you short on the explanation. I was like, this is what I want to know. So,
okay. Well, everybody needs water. The cities need water. Farmers need water. Industry needs water. If you want to bring more industry into the state, chances are they're going to need a water supply to go along with that. Micron needs water to make computer chips. Everywhere you go, there's a need for water. And it's our job to make sure that that water is available when it's needed to the greatest extent we can accommodate that.
What has led us to this point? Because effectively what has happened is, it's my understanding within the governor's proposed budget, he has allocated a $30 million recurring budget line to developing water. Is that accurate?
Yes, the governor has included in his budget a $30 million ongoing appropriation for water projects. And that money is needed to assist in doing all the good work that the Water Board does, helping water users, whatever their flavor may be, whether it's agriculture or municipalities or industry, to do the work that they need to do to be able to enjoy utilizing the water resources of the state.
What is that money going to be for? Now, again, I know in broad strokes, you're saying, hey, this is the goal of having this funding. But a lot of people, again, you have the Water Board, and that's $30 million for the Water Board specifically, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So it's not the Department of Water Resource. So it's $30 million coming to you. And again, what is that for? Planning for like recharge sites or doing research on different ways to store more water outside the aquifer, or?
It's really all the above. Part of it will be utilized to maintain projects we have online now. We have a great recharge program on the ESPA. We intend to expand the development of recharge into other parts of the state, and that requires ongoing funding to service those recharge programs. You have to work with your partners, canal companies, and others who help wheel the water from the river to the recharge sites. You have to pay wheeling fees to them. We have a monitoring program. We have a very extensive monitoring program on the ESPA to monitor the groundwater to assure that our water quality is maintained and that nothing that we're doing with regard to recharge would degrade the water quality of the aquifer. As we move into other areas, we move into the Treasure Valley, we've identified places in the Treasure Valley where there's potential for recharge. We will put the same programs in place in the Treasure Valley. In addition to just recharge, there's the potential for water storage. We're partnered with the Bureau of Reclamation to add an additional 29,000 acre feet of storage in Anderson Ranch Dam. Construction will begin on that in in 2026. We're looking for other opportunities on the Snake River and elsewhere. There's a potential to raise Minidoka Dam in the Magic Valley. It could store an additional 50,000 acre feet if that were enlarged to its full potential. The folks on the Weiser River have a little reservoir called Lost Valley Reservoir. We're helping them now do the environmental studies to see if it's feasible to expand that reservoir. It has some ESA issues. Some of these are tricky. Not every one of them is going to come together and move forward like we want it to, but we have to work where we can to increase surface water storage as well as groundwater storage through recharge.
Now, with the recharge, you have two different ways of predominant ways of getting recharge. One is you have something like a large acreage area, like 30, 40, 50 acres that, essentially a big, it's my understanding, it's like kind of like a big gravel pit, and you flood that area and you let gravity pull that down, and you get great filtration going through, lava and gravel and whatnot. So that when the water gets down into the actual aquifer, it has been essentially filtered through and through natural mechanisms, obviously, and then it can get pumped up however. So for those, you need a large area and you need to divert water into that essentially basin that can then get fed with gravity. Is that correct?
Yeah, in some cases, those are several hundred acres in size.
Gotcha. But then you have the other option, which is an injection well, which requires a smaller site. And this well is effectively a pipe that goes straight down into the aquifer. And this has a couple tricky things, at least it's been explained to me, because you don't have that natural filtration mechanism that allows the water to seep slowly through, different sands and gravel and stuff. It's like, no, it's going straight down. So whatever's going on the surface, that gets injected directly into the aquifer. Is that accurate?
Well, to a degree, it's accurate. Yeah. And we are looking at injection wells. We have drilled some test wells for the purpose of determining whether injection wells can work as an aquifer recharge mechanism. I don't think they're appropriate in all cases, but in some cases, I think it can be a very appropriate way to do it. There are places in Idaho where they've been using injection wells for probably over 30 years now. California and Arizona also have injection wells that they utilize for aquifer recharge. We're looking into this. The more direct method would require a much more robust monitoring program to ensure that there weren't any contaminants getting into the aquifer. That would include both sampling of the water that was being injected as well as constant monitoring of the aquifer to see what happens. Typically, when water is put into the aquifer and there's no oxygen or no sunlight, all the bacteria and all the other bad stuff just goes away. So it's not a problem. I know there are people out there that are concerned about it, and we're taking our time as we move through it. Some people have made their concerns known to us about potential projects, and those projects are just in the very early developmental stages. We're trying to ascertain what's going on in the aquifer now. We need to get some baseline data on what the quality of the water in the aquifer is, what the quality of the water that potentially would be injected into the ground is, and determine if and where injection wells are an appropriate device for us to use.
Got it. It was explained to me that Idaho has a lot of projects on water, right? Some are producing more water, like with a cloud seeding program that helps coax out more precipitation from juicy clouds that are flying over. And that might be on the eastern part of the state or the southern part of the state, but that's a program that engages in increasing precipitation. There was a lot said about the conflict with the water call last year because people were saying, oh, well, they dumped, 600,000 acre feet of water. They just let it go down the river. But that's not an accurate representation of what happens. Effectively, what you're talking about is, okay, when we get precipitation, how do we store it? Because look, it's not like somebody was sitting there with a water bottle that was a 600,000 acre foot water bottle. They're like, oh, no, I don't care about that. Let that water go. It's like, no, I don't have anywhere to put this. I got to grab it, right? I got to be able to store it somewhere, and then I have to be able to release it in some capacity as well. A lot of this is steering around, okay, how do we grab and store this? Because we can only push increased precipitation so far, and we live in a desert, right? That's just a fact of the state. So it's not that we don't, it's been explained to me that it's not that we don't have enough water. It's that we don't have enough ways to grab the water and utilize it effectively. Is that an accurate representation?
Yeah, I think that's fair. That's the problem. When we are blessed with an abundant supply of water, we have a limited ability to store it. On the Upper Snake, we have about 4 million acre feet of surface storage space. And then we're able to do a significant amount of recharge. We built out our recharge capacity in the last 10 years to where we can recharge significant amounts of water. We could probably do over 500,000 acre feet in a season if it was the right season and the water came off in the right way. We need to continue to build out the infrastructure so that we can get that number up to where we have a potential for more like 1 million acre feet. And if we would have had that in place last year, very little of that water would have spilled past Milner and gone to the ocean. But it's expensive and it takes time, and we have to work with our partners, canal companies. We have to work with the Bureau of Land Management. Many of these potential recharge basins are on federal land, so we have to work through the process of being able to utilize that land for the purposes of recharge. We're doing some on private land in eastern Idaho now, and we hope we can continue to develop some of that. But as you can imagine, it's pretty expensive to go in and acquire those properties and convert them into recharge basins that are going to have fairly intermittent use.
When we talk about the need for this, there are some people that they wonder why we can't integrate better efficiencies in water usage. It's like, okay, we're doing so much to store, we're doing so much to produce. Why can't we get more efficient with our water usage? But water efficiency and usage with water is part of the problem that we're trying to grapple with, right? Because it used to be that we had mass inefficiencies with the way we flood irrigated. We improved that with technology and improved efficiency, and that actually made the aquifer problem exacerbated. Is that correct?
Well, to a degree, yeah. I mean, one man's efficiency project is another man's new water shortfall issue. If somebody lines a canal and reduces the amount of incidental recharge that's occurring on that canal system, however, whatever that incremental amount is, that many acre feet is no longer going to the aquifer. So that makes the aquifer that much has that much less water in it that's available to divert for those who rely on groundwater. So we kind of have to be careful. You can't encourage people to waste water. You can't force them to waste water. They have every right to be efficient, and it's understandable why. A lot of canals have tried to line leaky sections of their canals. Back in the day, storage water, you could rent it for $2 or $3 an acre foot. Now in the Upper Snake, it goes between $50 and $100 an acre foot. So those canals that rely on using a lot of storage water, if they can reduce those losses when they're utilizing storage water, yeah, they're going to do it because it stretches their storage supply, and it allows them to grow crops that have a higher water demand than they otherwise could if that water were percolating into the aquifer and leaving them short at the end of the irrigation season.
This is the first time that we've had this line item. Is that correct? The $30 million to the Water Board?
Well, the Water Board has other funding. There's $5 million a year that comes from the cigarette tax. And then there's another $5 million of general fund money that goes into the secondary aquifer account to basically cover O&M, and those two amounts, that $10 million has to date pretty well been covering our needs to take care of the O&M for cloud seeding and for aquifer recharge. But as we continue to build out both of those programs, we're going to need more ongoing funding simply to maintain those programs.
And that's the idea here. It's like, hey, look, yeah, we've been putting it together and it has been sufficient. But at this point, the state's growing fast enough. The water needs are such that if we don't get ahead of this, we're going to end up being behind it significantly, 10 years down the road or 20 years down the road where, we're in a big bind.
Well, we're going to need the ongoing funding, and we've been blessed, and I'm very appreciative, as I think every member of the Water Resource Board is, of the generosity of the legislature and the support of the governor in providing us with significant funding. But these water projects are expensive, and the money doesn't go as far as you would hope that it would. And so we have allocated all the one-time monies and the ARPA money that's been appropriated for the water board to use. That is all allocated to projects right now, and there are still additional projects that need to be funded into the future.
One more question about there are returns that you ROIs as far as water storage that you get on something like increasing the height of a reservoir like Anderson Ranch versus increasing recharge into the aquifer. And even with these things, when people talk about like, well, can't you just make the reservoirs bigger? Or can't you, like, can't you go ahead and just build, like, you bring back Teton Dam, something like that, right? Sounds like a bad idea. Didn't go well the first time.
Well, just quickly, Teton could be successfully rebuilt, and it would be a safe impoundment. But there are those out there that would like to see the Teton remain a free-flowing river. And so you come into dealing with the environmental constraints on top of finding the funding to do a project of that size and scale. And there's a lot of complexities there.
Right. And one of them would be, even when you're looking at, let's say, Anderson Ranch, increasing, I think, the height of the dam by like 6 feet or something of that nature. That last 6 feet would be a junior water right to like the initial height of it, right? Because even when you're adding on to these programs, they don't, like, the prior appropriation gets really complex when you're messing around with, even increasing capacity here or there. And those are not direct returns. Like, the dam may not fill up, or the reservoir may not fill up every single year. It might be every third year or every second year. So there are variables with these investments. So for people that say like, well, can't you just store more? Can't you just increase the height of dam? Or can't you do this? It's like, well, we still have to mess around with the variability of water and precipitation.
It's the same whether you're recharging or storing it. It's going to get put in place with the priority water right you have. And in the case of Anderson Ranch, we anticipate that that new space will fill about half the time, give or take. And it could fill every year for 3 years and then not fill at all for 5. Those are the unknowns that we don't know. And it's the same with aquifer recharge. You could have a year like the previous year where a lot of water escaped the basin. If you had the capacity, you could take it all. But there was a couple of previous years that there wasn't any recharge done in the Upper Valley because the water rights didn't come into priority to allow it.
Man, this is complex. The prior appropriation, I think TJ Budge was explaining to me first back in May of last year. And it, for a dumb like me, like my head kind of exploded a little bit as he was going through it, but it ultimately makes sense. So bottom line is there are future investments in water infrastructure, water recharge, water storage. All of those things are going to be supported by the $30 million that is presumably going to be allocated. Is that accurate?
Yes. I mean, we will be looking to use those funds to take care of the resources of the state. The community of Moscow, it needs a new water supply. Their aquifer is in decline. It's complicated because they share that aquifer with Washington State, with the community of Pullman. We got to figure out how to get more water into the Moscow-Pullman area. And Idaho needs to do their part to sustain Moscow. The Mountain Home aquifer is in decline. We've been very fortunate that we were able to work with the Air Force and put a pipeline in place to get water to the Air Force Base and assure the Air Force that they have a sustainable water supply so that they can continue their operations into the future. We've built enough capacity into that the Air Force can expand their mission at the base should they choose. And that's a great thing. But the rest of Mountain Home and the rest of Elmore County, we've got to try and figure out a way to help them get additional water. And it has to come within the priority system. So those rights that would be secured for them would be junior and more intermittent in their availability. So it comes back to storage and recharge and all the things you can do to take advantage of the water when it's there.
I had not heard anything about Mountain Home or Moscow. How do you manage a shared resource like an aquifer that crosses state lines? I mean, it's hard enough to manage it within this state when you have different, I mean, at least that's what was explained to me by Dean Stevenson, another water board member. It's like, when water goes in, you don't necessarily know where it's coming out. You don't know when it's coming out. And like, how do you do that with another state?
Well, you just have to work cooperatively. There's an organization made up of people from both Washington State and Idaho. It's called PBAC. I think that's Palouse Basin Aquifer Committee. That's what the acronym is. And they've been studying this situation for several years. We recently provided them with some funding to do some studies on what the best way to get additional water to those communities might be, whether it be from the Snake River or whether it be from the Clearwater River. There's an opportunity, potentially, you could have a small reservoir on one of the creeks up in that area, but it is part of the Indian reservation, so we'd have to work through whatever process the tribes thought was necessary for that. There's no easy solutions, but there are solutions, and I think if we're diligent, we can solve a lot of these problems over time, and it's going to take some time. And right now we have a very proactive water board. We're looking into areas that don't have an urgent problem like the ESPA has. My goal would be to implement programs that prevent places like the Treasure Valley or others from getting into the situation that we find ourselves in on the ESPA, so that we're playing offense and not defense all the time.
God bless it, man. That's a lot of complexity. But again, there's money going to it. It's going to be very needed, especially as we move into the future to ensure water security across state. Is there anything you'd like to add here at the end? I know it's a working day for you. I appreciate you coming in. There's the big water convention tomorrow. So anything else we've missed?
No, appreciate the opportunity to visit with you. If people are interested in what the board's doing, we have a website, or a portion of the Idaho Department of Water Resources website is dedicated to the water board and our projects, if you'd like to go there and look. I'll always welcome public input, and we get quite a bit of it. Had quite a few emails over the weekend, actually. But that's part of the job, and we want to know what people are thinking and try to address their needs and their concerns. And I think we're doing a pretty good job. We could always do better, but I think that with the help of the legislature and the governor providing us funding, it's allowed us to accomplish a lot in the last several years, and we hope to continue to do more into the future.
Well, I appreciate you, sir. I'm part of the problem. I don't make qualms about it. I moved here from out of state, and I'm sure my house and just my life and my family pull up water and make things more difficult. And I appreciate you guys going to bat to make the state still awesome. So thank you for what you do. Hopefully we can do it again.
Okay, thank you.